The 1960s. When you think of the decade, you might picture civil rights marches, the counterculture movement, or the space race. But one of the most remarkable events to come out of the 1960s took place at an unassuming lunch counter in Philadelphia. The Dewey's lunch counter sit-in wasn't just an act of defiance. It was a historical turning point for the LGBTQ+ movement. The Dewey's lunch counter sit-in is a historical example of rights and responsibilities because it showcased the LGBTQ+ community's demand for equal treatment in public spaces, the responsibility of individuals to protest injustice, and the obligation of business to respect and uphold the rights of all people. This protest laid essential groundwork for future civil rights advancements and social equality. On April 25, 1965, Dewey's Restaurant on 219th South 17th Street in Philadelphia became the focal point of a significant protest against the discriminatory practices targeting the LGBTQ+ community. Management had recently implemented a policy refusing service to those individuals who identified as homosexual, masculine women, feminine men, or those wearing nonconformist clothing. In response, approximately 150 patrons were denied service that day. Among them, 3 teenagers whose identities still remain unknown courageously staged a peaceful sit-in, refusing to vacate their seats despite threats of arrest. Their act of defiance led to their arrest on charges of disorderly conduct. Clark Pollock, president of the Janus Society, a local LGBTQ rights organization, offered legal assistance to the arrested youths and was himself arrested during the incident. Following these events, the Janus Society intensified their efforts by distributing over 1,500 leaflets in the subsequent days, raising awareness about the discriminatory practices at Dewey's. Their persistent activism culminated in a second sit-in on May 2, 1965. Although this time police were present, no arrests were made, and the patrons remained for approximately 4 hours. Shortly thereafter, Dewey's reversed its discriminatory policy, marking one of the earliest victories for LGBTQ+ civil rights through direct action. The Dewey's sit-ins are recognized as some of the earliest organized LGBTQ+ protests in the United States, setting the precedent for future activism and contributing to the broader civil rights movements. To understand the significance of the Dewey sit-in, we must first step back and examine the world in which it occurred. The 1960s was a time of great change, but also deep prejudice. LGBTQ individuals lived in the shadows, facing systematic discrimination in employment, housing, and public life. Being openly gay or transgender was not just socially stigmatized, it was often criminalized. Before the Dewey sit-in in 1965, life for LGBTQ individuals was filled with challenges and systematic discrimination. Homophobia was deeply ingrained in society, and being openly gay or transgender often led to severe consequences. Laws at the time criminalized same-sex relationships and non-conforming gender expressions, leaving LGBTQ+ individuals vulnerable to police harassment and legal persecution. Public spaces were far from safe havens. Many businesses, including bars, restaurants, and clubs, explicitly barred LGBTQ+ patrons or implemented dress codes designed to exclude them. Establishments like Dewey's Lunch Counter enforced policies targeting those deemed non-conforming, reflecting the broader societal hostility. The culture of exclusion forced LGBTQ+ people to hide their identities and form underground communities for safety and solidarity. Despite this, small acts of resistance and the determination to exist authentically began to grow. It was within this oppressive climate that the Dewey sit-in emerged brave and publicly challenged the status quo, marking the beginning of a broader fight for visibility and equality. The immediate reactions to the Dewey sit-ins on April 25th were mixed, reflecting the polarized views of LGBTQ+ rights during the time. While the mainstream media largely ignored the event, members of the LGBTQ+ community and local activists recognized its significance and rallied to support the cause. Organizations like the Janus Society, one of the first LGBTQ+ rights groups in Philadelphia, played a crucial role in amplifying the protest's message. They distributed over 1,500 leaflets in the days following the sit-in, condemning Dewey's discriminatory policies and calling for collective action against injustice. Within the LGBTQ+ community, the sit-in became a rallying cry, inspiring a sense of solidarity and empowerment. However, not everyone shared this enthusiasm. Some viewed the protesters as too radical, fearing that such direct action might provoke backlash or worsen existing prejudice. Businesses and much of the general public either dismissed or opposed the protest, unwilling to change the social norms of the time. Despite these challenges, the sit-in planted the seeds for future activism. The bravery of the teenagers involved and the support they received from allies demonstrated that resilience, even in small acts, could disrupt discrimination and demand accountability. Public reaction to the sit-in was mixed. As stated previously, mainstream media largely ignored the event, which reflected society's reluctance to acknowledge LGBTQ+ issues. However, within the community, the sit-in became a rallying point. It demonstrated the power of collective action and inspired hope for change. While the immediate impact of the Dewey sit-in was limited, it significantly grew over time. It laid the groundwork for future activism, including the Stonewall riots just 4 years later. The sit-in proved that grassroots protests could challenge discrimination and inspire larger movements for change. The Dewey sit-in highlighted both progress and challenges. On the one hand, it empowered the LGBTQ+ community and inspired future activism. On the other, it exposed the deep resistance to change within society. Many activists faced backlash, and the road to equality remained long and arduous. The Dewey's Lunch Counter sit-in is a pivotal moment in history that exemplifies the intersection of rights and responsibilities, particularly within the LGBTQ+ community's struggle for equal treatment in public spaces. This event, which took place in 1965, is notable for being one of the first of the public demonstrations specifically organized by LGBTQ+ activists to protest discrimination in public spaces, a form of protest that laid important groundwork for future civil rights advancements. The sit-in at Dewey's Lunch Counter highlighted the LGBTQ community's desire for equal access and fair treatment in public spaces, much like the broader civil rights movement that sought to end racial segregation. The counter was a popular and essential gathering spot in Philadelphia, yet it had a history of discriminating against LGBTQ+ individuals. The act of sitting in at this counter represented the community's fight for inclusion in everyday spaces that should have been open to all people, regardless of sexual orientation. The sit-in was not just about having a meal at a counter, but asserting that LGBTQ+ people deserve to be seen and treated equally in public spaces. Their willingness to face potential arrest or violence shows the extent of which they felt it was necessary to speak out for the rights of marginalized people, even at personal risk. Their actions raised awareness about the widespread discrimination faced by the LGBTQ+ individuals and created space for larger conversations about civil rights and equality. The sit-in also emphasized the obligation of businesses to uphold the rights of all people. As a place of service, Dewey's Lunch Counter was responsible for treating every customer with respect and dignity. By refusing the service of LGBTQ+ patrons, the business violated the basic principle of equality. The protest called on businesses to ensure that all individuals, regardless of sexual orientation, were afforded the same rights and access to public services. This was a call for businesses to adhere to human dignity and fairness, values that are central to a just society. Beyond its immediate impact, the Dewey's Lunch Counter sit-in was an important precursor to the broader LGBTQ+ rights movement. It helped pave the way for other forms of activism and advocacy that sought to change the public perception of LGBTQ+ people and demand equal rights. The visibility of the protest and the courageous actions of the participants inspired future generations to continue fighting for social equality. It set a precedent for the future, demonstrating that direct action and civil disobedience could lead to important social change. This moment is a part of a larger story of the LGBTQ+ rights movement, which has continued to evolve and expand over time, culminating in milestones like marriage equality and anti-discrimination protections. Even after the sit-in, life did not magically become easier for the community. Persistent homophobia was still an issue, however the community was not deterred. In fact, they were more passionate than ever. More and more voices slowly began to surface, as well as more organized protests, whether those in the form of huge movements such as the Stonewall riots, or the first Pride marches, but as well as the small stuff too. For example, Harvey Milk's election, who was one of the first openly gay officials elected into the US, or the Campton cafeteria riots, where an entire cafeteria's worth of patrons started attacking the police because one officer grabbed a drag queen. These movements help illustrate the resilience and determination of the LGBTQ+ community over the years in the US. Today, we remember the Dewey sit-in as a defining moment in the fight for LGBTQ+ rights. It taught us that standing up against injustice is both a right and a responsibility. The courage of those who protested at Dewey's continues to inspire the ongoing struggle for equality and inclusion. Pride in general has become such a large part of the culture in the US today, and it's largely thanks to the century-long activism we've been able to have. Generations of people have been fighting just to exist and to love each other, which is honestly crazy. Because what happened at Dewey's is not just an event that happened 60 years ago. It was revolutionary. It's a core part of the story of the LGBTQ+ movement in the US. And now it's up to us to keep this story alive. This one small act in the grand scheme of things has helped create so much happiness and opportunity for so many people across the country, and I think we owe it to those before us, not to forget their act of bravery.